Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. Apologies for a bit of a delayed start. We had some technical issues, of course, which always seems to happen. But we're glad that you're here with us today. Just a bit of housekeeping before I dive in. My name is Kim O'Shaughnessy. I am a field marketing manager here at Binalyze, and I'm joined by my colleague, Robert O'Leary, who's a solution architect at Binalyze. He'll be doing the demo portion for us this afternoon. Before we jump into the demo portion, I just wanted to give everyone a quick overview of Binalyze. So Binalyze was established in 2018 to innovate and disrupt the digital forensics incident response industry in order to speed up the investigation process. So Binalyze AIR is a solution that allows enterprises and MSSPs alike to speed up response investigations and to conclude those investigations in less than 4 hours, which is a big improvement from what we've heard from a lot of our clients and customers, that they've reduced those investigations from days, weeks, even months to hopefully just around 4 hours. So how do we do that? We collect and process hundreds of evidence types very quickly in just 7 to 10 minutes. We also do an assessment that is in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And then we also allow for that to be triaged and tagged using Yara Sigma OS query searches. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Robert so that he can introduce himself, give you a little bit of background, and then we'll dive into the demo portion.
Thanks, Kim. Yes, as Kim said, I'm a senior solutions architect here at Binalyze. To give you some background, you can see my bio script is there, but I started the technology investigation unit at the New Jersey State Police and spent the remainder of my career there until I retired and went to work for the National Institute of Justice as director of the Electronic Crime Technology Center. When I moved into the private sector, I was director of incident response and digital forensics professional services at Access Data, and then head of investigations over at Nuix before I came to Binalyze. So I'm happy to share with you the Binalyze interface, and I'm going to go ahead and take you through a live demo of the Binalyze AIR console. So you should be able to see the console now. This is Binalyze AIR, or Automated Incident Response. What you see is the basically we have multiple screens and tabs open, so I'll walk you through this and the interface. But for those that have multiple organizations or departments within your enterprise that you're monitoring, you're able to compartmentalize those and look at multiple simultaneously without any overlap or any combination. So what you can see here is I can very quickly change the organization, and I have the ability to do my search through it. Now, if I look at this particular compromised organization, you'll notice here that in this case, I have 25 open cases and 4 active tasks running based on the window in the upper left here. You'll notice that it also displays the recent activity, such as an image of a Win7 machine and the addition of an asset assigned to James Cook. Further moving over to the
Sorry to interrupt you. We're getting some messages that folks aren't able to see your screen.
Okay, can you see it?
I can see it, correct.
Okay, let me reset the settings here. How about now? Are we able to see the screen? Hello? Oh, I can see it just resolved on mine. Can we see it?
I can see it on my end.
Okay, I'll continue. Let me know if we get any other messages.
Oh, wait, there it goes. Okay, everyone's saying there it goes.
Okay. All right, so continuing, we can see the recent activity. We can also see the summary of assets assigned to this particular organization. So in this organization, we have 31 total. Of that, 14 are managed, which means they're running our responder on there. And I'll show you how you're able to, I don't know, wait, untick your slides. What does that mean? Essentially, it's running the responder on that endpoint, and it's reporting into the console. Additionally, you can see that 4 of the assets are unreachable, and basically what that means is they haven't connected to the Binalyze AIR console for over 30 days, which indicates you may want to investigate those machines and why. Further, we can see that there are 2 that are isolated, and essentially what that means is these were identified as having some anomalies or some vulnerability or risk to the enterprise, to the environment, so they can be isolated, investigated, and remediated without having to shut down the entire production environment. So moving on, you can see that we can see the activity. Additionally, we can view all of the insights, and from this we can look at the activity for specific users or all the users across the entity. One of the things that I find valuable about this is, from my experience in having run teams, utilization was always critical, and being able to identify utilization in those periods of time where we had max utilization was exactly what we wanted to be able to provide. So you can see you've got quite a lot of information right in the console right away. Additionally, from the upper right corner next to the organization selection, we have the quick start, and from the quick start we're able to acquire evidence, essentially artifacts, and we are able to do that based on acquisition profiles that you can pre-configure and have ready to go, ideally named for what they do, and I'll walk you through those steps as well. Additionally, we can acquire a disk image, which would allow us to grab a physical or a logical volume image in an DD format. We can perform a triage. From that, essentially, we're not doing any collection. We're essentially triaging one or multiple machines in our environment so that we are able to make a determination as to the highest priority risk machines. We can also use this for proactive threat hunting. When our staff is not actively engaged in a cyber incident investigation, we are able to assign them to proactive threat hunting and maximize their utility. Additionally, we have the ability to interact with another machine, and actually I have that set up here in my environment. Here you can see I've switched the environment to a separate one here in my office. This is one of the machines right here in my office, and I'm able to establish a connection to that machine, and I can perform a number of tasks. So I'll come back to that when we establish that connection and we're able to run through there. Additionally, I can do a comparison, and I have that set up as well to show you. So I can compare the state of a machine at 2 different periods in time. For example, when the machine is first provisioned on my network. Conversely, I could do it when, do a baseline when AIR is first installed or implemented on my network, and then do a comparison of that machine if it should start exhibiting anomalous behavior at some point in the future. I would be able to see what changed, what was added, or what was deleted from that machine. And again, I can walk you through that as well. As I walk through the next tab here on the left vertical panel, the blue panel, I can look at my assets, which is the next option down. And in here, you can see, again, we have the 31 assets. Of those, 18 are computers. So if I wanted to zero in just on the computers, you can see that I have the ability to grab a single or multiple items. I could grab these and say these 4 or 5 users were of concern. And from this point, I could do an acquisition of evidence, which would allow me to assign them to a case and say, I want to do this test case and select a profile. So I have multiple profiles in here. So if I wanted to do, for instance, a compromised assessment, you can see that I've got multiple in here already that I can choose from. Essentially, what we're looking at is a new acquisition profile that we can create and have ready to go at any time. Additionally, we can make those available to all organizations or departments that we're monitoring, or a specific one, depending on the type of information we want to collect. And you can see here that we can grab that from Windows, Linux, Mac OS, IBM, AIX, and we can do a generic e-discovery collection. Essentially, we can move into the artifact list, and of these, we have 128 items in the evidence list. 21 system items I can grab or select as many or as few as I want, any subset in there. Additionally, I can move down into indicators of persistence, such as WMI script or WMI command line. We look at scheduled tasks. We can also grab the volume information, the master boot record, RAM, page file, swap, or hibernation file. We can also grab the browser artifacts. You can see that we can collect these from a variety of browser artifacts and pull that relevant data in. Again, depending on what our investigation or the incident involves, we would select those items that are most likely going to provide us information related to that type of event. Again, we can grab the registry, the network information, the event logs, and essentially the prosecution execution logs, such as prefetch, system resource, usage monitor, the Windows timeline. We can grab the link files, or we can parse those link files, or do both. And then we have the additional other evidence, such as jump lists, superfetch, and the RDP cache. So again, we can grab that, any number of these items or any combination. In addition to those, we can go into the artifact list and augment or enrich our artifact collection with categories such as the logs, server logs, application, Microsoft application logs, communication, the remote desktop management tools, the social artifacts, productivity artifacts, utilities artifacts, developer tools, cloud artifacts, antivirus logs. So you can see we can grab quite a robust variety of options. Additionally, if there were specific information we wanted to grab every time, and this comes up frequently when I speak with our customers, they might want to grab everything out of the users directory or all user shares on a particular asset and all of the documents or any other related subdirectories in there. Additionally, we can add in as many as we need simply by selecting add a path, and we can grab multiple paths, the data from multiple paths simultaneously in a single artifact collection. We also have the option for the network capture, which allows us to grab NetFlow or TCP and UDP connections, and the PCAPs. We can grab the Internet Protocol packets, the IP packets, as a PCAP. We also have the option added in this latest version to add OS query rules, and I'll go into OS query rules in a little more detail. But that gives you an idea of how we're going to acquire evidence and create a new acquisition profile. Additionally, we can acquire a disk image and say, I want to grab it from this one machine or multiple. And then I have the options to look at the volumes or the full disk on this machine and make those collections. And again, I can push that into the directory that I prefer. And from here, you can see that we can add multiple directories. We have the ability to select an SMB, FTP, Amazon S3 buckets, or Azure blobs. So we are able to push those disk images into our repository for examination. Further, we can perform triage. And again, one of the other options you have for all of these artifact collection or disk collection, we can do them as online or off network. Off network would be those machines or assets in our environment that don't happen to have the responder running on them. And I will show you how we can get into that quickly. But I could grab multiple machines and say, I want to, again, look at this particular one. the Richard Burton, the James Cook, and perhaps the web server. And what I'm able to do is go in and add these to a case. And in this case, I can, okay, I'll just add them to this particular case that I looked at before. I have the option to schedule it to run immediately upon completing these settings, or schedule it for to commence at some point in the future. So I could simply select the date and time and kick that off. I also have the ability to enable the MITRE ATT&CK analyzer. And we can add in triage rules. So in here, if I wanted to search for triage rules that have already been created for indicators of compromise, I could just do a quick search through them. Further, if I decided I wanted to look for specific items, I could create a new Yara Sigma OS query rule. And I'll give you a quick look at how we could do this. We can upload our existing library of rules, or we could actually build a new rule based on the patterns that have already been assigned. So for instance, if I wanted to look for a string, or I wanted to look for a malware domain, you'll notice that the basic rule has already been created. However, one of the other options that we have here is the ability to create or have our Frank AI write a Yara rule for us. And in preparation, I gave Frank AI a request to write a Yara script to find 5 hash values. And you can see here that all I have to do is copy this and then plug in the hash values right here. As a matter of fact, the rule even tells you, replace the quote, put hash value here with the actual hash values you're looking for. So all I have to do is copy and paste this and plug it into my Yara rule, save it, and I can run it. Additionally, I have the ability, another one that I did was write a Yara rule to find Mimikatz. You'll notice the only criteria I put in there was Mimikatz. However, Frank AI also knew to include lsdump.sam, lsdump.desync, and privilege::debug. So you can see that all of these conditions may indicate the presence of Mimikatz on an endpoint or multiple endpoints. So I have that ability to leverage our Frank AI in order to do that. Moving on, you'll notice that in addition to those options, actually I will take you through here, we have the ability in the quick start also to do an interact. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and close this session and restart it. From here, I want to select that particular machine. Let's go to my assets here. And perform interact. Just had to reboot for whatever reason. My interact is disabled. Let me see if I can go into a interact from one of my other options here. I'm going to quickly start this session, see if I can kick off an interact session with this particular machine. You'll notice that as it's establishing a connection, I get the green lock icon, and the message tells me that communication between the responder running on this particular asset and the AIR console that you're looking at is end-to-end encrypted. Additionally, it gives me the other details related to this. In this particular machine, I have 2 volumes on a single disk. The first is 84.15 gigabytes, and the other is a little over 1 gig. So you can see quickly I have this established. I can simply type in the help command. This gives me a basic list of the commands that I have readily available. Additionally, I could switch volumes. I could do an ls, so I could look and see what's on that 1 gig partition that may be there, and then collect or get any of the data from there. Additionally, if I had done the triage and identified some processes that I felt were suspicious or could potentially compromise my environment, I could simply select the kill option to kill the process either by name or process ID. Additionally, when I close this session, everything that I did in the session is logged in here, so I can go in and look at the results of that very quickly. The next item I have is the ability to timeline. I can timeline a single machine or multiple machines in a case. Additionally, I have the ability to add to an existing timeline. So if I have a rolling production and additional images or triages or collected artifacts are being produced, I'm able to add them into my existing timeline and be able to view the sequence of events across multiple machines in the environment in a single platform, in a single view. I also have the option to compare, and essentially what this allows me to do is compare, again, the state of the machine at 2 different periods of time. This is what it will look like. This is a compare that I had done 7 months ago. You'll notice here on this Dell 7440. Additionally, I then did it 4 months ago as well, 3 months after the initial. And in that window of time, it shows me that 123 items were added, just under 1,200 were changed, and 102 were deleted. And if I wanted to see what that looked like, I could simply open up the changed option, and it's going to show me what was modified in that key by identifying the state that it was previously in 7 months ago and the state it was in four months ago. You'll notice on the left under the progress, I looked at these particular items. This is what I was searching for when I did the compare. So we can see that I've got the installed applications in that time frame. 8 applications were installed and 5 were deleted, 14 were changed. The auto run scheduled tasks. This is always something that I keyed in on because we often see malware is placed on a machine, but not activated or not run until a scheduled task kicks it off at some point in the future when the user is, or the hacker is comfortable essentially that the detection has not been made on the malware placed on the machine. Additionally, you'll notice that there are notifications. A new notification came in indicated by the red dot, and you can see that this is reporting the Interact shell that I just performed on my ransomware case. Moving down, you can see that I can look at the disk images on these machines. So if I look at the Win7 disk image, for instance, I have the ability to not only calculate the hash or remove it from my case, but I can also access my file explorer, which allows me to go into a more traditional digital forensics phase and navigate through the directory structure to look for anything that may be of relevance to the incident I'm examining. So I have the ability to not only grab the data, grab the assets, but I can grab a disk image and actually navigate through the disk image as well. I also have the ability to run on cloud sources, including, you'll notice I have 2 Azure machines that I'm running this on, and 6 Amazon EC2 instances. So I have those as well. I can add them into my case. Moving into the cases, this is actually one of the things that I think is probably the most valuable part of automated incident response in Binalyze AIR, in that I can move into this phishing case and very quickly we can take that information that has been developed either through a manual collection of artifacts and a acquisition of a disk image or a triage. However, we can also leverage the triggers from our perimeter or network perimeter detection tool, EDR, MDR, XDR, SIM, or SOAR. When it kicks off an alert, you can configure Binalyze AIR to initiate a collection based on those alerts from roughly 24 perimeter detection products. And we're able to go ahead and start looking at that data very quickly as soon as our consultants get assigned to the case, essentially. You'll notice the first thing they see is they come into this dashboard and they'll see the results as soon as they get the assignment to go investigate the alerts. So here you can see this Win10 machine has 9 high triggered or 9 high risk items. The Richard Burton machine has 5. John Cabot has 1, and William Adams has, or John Cabot has 3, and William Adams has 1. These 4 machines, probably one of the first things I would recommend is isolating them, investigating the threats on them, and remediating them. But to get more information granularly, you can see that we can go in here and begin to look at what triggered those alerts. And in this case, we have information that was triggered by the MITRE attack analyzers. So it involves 13 tactics, 60 techniques, resulting in 11,533 findings. So very quickly, I can navigate through these. I can go right to the tactics and decide that I want to look specifically at just the highs initially, or I have the option in the sub menu to navigate through and look for the red alerts. That'll tell me the red or the orange, which are the medium. Look for those alerts and react to them immediately. So in this, you can see that I have 42 in registry, 20 in scheduled tasks, 1 in services, 28 in the parsed items. Let me go down here and look for my threats. I want to see if there was anything downloaded that might indicate that there was a threat in my environment. Scheduled tasks. Oop, here we go. I have 13 in download. So if I select those, I can look very quickly and see what was in here that might have triggered these alerts. Sure enough, if I look here, you'll notice this bottom one shows me that the Richard Burton machine has the Mimi Love. Additionally, Richard Burton machine has the Mimi Cats. If I move over a little bit, you'll notice that I have the ability to check that hash against the virus total results. So while Mimi Cats is readily identifiable, this may be a variant of an existing malware that we have, or virus that we haven't seen before. So we could see what it's consistent with. In this particular case, the virus total results give me 65 out of 73 sources have identified it as a malware and a high risk. So I can grab those and remediate that immediately off of those machines. Additionally, I could do the same thing for the other areas in which those alerts were identified. Moving back to the case details here, I have the ability to generate a report from here. I can also acquire image, timeline it, or triage it, or create a new timeline. But additionally, I have timelines in here, and I'll take you through that to show you what that looks like. Our library option includes our acquisition profiles, and out of these, I've got about 44. So you'll see that I've got a rather robust library of existing artifact, our acquisition profiles. So I can select one that exists or go through those steps that I'd shown you previously to create a new one. Further, there's triage rules. There are essentially 125. As I've shown you using Frank AI in order to create a new rule, I could simply say, I want to grab this Mimi Cats rule. I could simply copy this, move it into my add a new YAR rule option, and you'll see that I have some data in there by default to start with. I could simply paste in my Mimi Cats rule, and I then save it for Mimi Cats YAR rule. And I have the ability to scan or triage all of the assets in my environment for anything consistent with Mimi Cats, or I could select a subset of items in my environment. Additionally, for the interact rules, I can include things that I want to use while I'm in that interact session that I had previously shown you, where I open up a shell on my asset. I can bring in things like the toolkit or specific tools that I want to work with and bring them into that environment to be able to do an analysis on it locally on that asset remotely. Additionally, the auto tagging rules, we can run these in our settings. We can set these to run when the responder is first deployed to the asset. It'll scan the machine, identify those that are virtual machines, which are load balancers, which are proxy servers. So we can quickly identify any of those machines in that environment. And if we're looking for something in particular, such as the domain controller or the IIS web server, we can very quickly identify which machine that is. We also have the option to include exclusion rules. And you can see here, if there was a finding that WMI PRVSE execution was enabled or was found, it can be ignored from our or excluded from our findings. It doesn't mean it removes it from the case, it just suppresses it from the view. Additionally, we can create a custom flag set, and here's one you'll notice that I created with anything with an entropy of greater than 7.2, and I also added in here the explanation for other users that might want to see this. So you'll notice that I have the ability here to say, to explain why I've added this particular flag and why I've got the custom flag set in here to identify any files that have an entropy greater than 7.2. And this is one of the primary reasons that I've included this is approximately 55% of all malicious samples have an entropy of 7.2 or more. So that's one of the reasons that we include that in here. For our integrations, again, I had mentioned earlier the ability to take those triggers from the perimeter detection tools. You can see here we have the ability to integrate with API tokens. Additionally, we can integrate with webhooks. And of these, let me see here. We currently have 41 existing webhooks, but if I wanted to add a new one, I could simply select the corresponding parser to the perimeter detection tool we're using. And as I said, we have somewhere around 24 existing. And you can see we've got Microsoft Defender, Microsoft Sentinel, QRadar, Rapid7. So depending on what we're using for our perimeter detection tool, we're able to take the alert from that. We can automate the process based on our acquisition profile. And again, these are the profiles that I'd shown you previously. So if I wanted to do a compromise assessment on a machine based on a trigger from Carbon Black, I could simply select that. I could also set to ignore recurrence. So if I got the same alert within an hour in the same day, I could ignore it for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8, 12, or the same day. So I could minimize the amount of duplicate alerts I got from the same event, depending on how long or how often it was coming in. Additionally, I can add in keywords here. So for this, I might want to do open up a inventory or a library of keywords that I might have. For instance, I have this list here that I generally grab and simply copy and paste into my keyword list, and I can add those in here to search for anything related to Mimikatz or the executable for it. Further, I'm able to leverage the MITRE ATT&CK Analyzer framework. So you can see that I can turn on or off the MITRE ATT&CK framework analyzers. Additionally, we can leverage the more granular drone analyzers that are built into Binalyze AIR. And you can see we've got the analyzers just like the generic web shell, the vulnerability, the ransomware. I don't need to read the entire list, but you can see we have all of these options. And again, this is where the automated incident response portion comes in, because as any one of these perimeter detection tools, and you'll see the parser names are listed according to those and the acquisition profile related to it, the data that it's going to pull in. And it's going to kick that off and immediately begin to show us results. Those results are reflected in the investigation hub for the case. So I'm able to start looking at that data immediately, as opposed to going back and trying to assess the actual alert or trigger and then work forward from that point. If we look at the activity, again, you can see that I've set this up here as I've got the ability to grab this data and incorporate it not only into my internal reports for utilization, but also incorporate it into my report on the incident. So I've got the utilization and the average, the metrics for average acquisition time and the number of assets per case. So I can look at that. I can also see the number of currently live cases, and the average number of live cases. So we can see that we're actually running ahead of average this particular week. When we look at the tasks, I can see that everything that has been performed in this, again, the Interact shell was completed 17 minutes ago in this webinar, and I can see what the results of that are. I'm able to go into it simply by looking at the details, and it'll tell me here's the report information for it and what was performed. So had I performed any tasks in there or transferred any files, they would be reflected in that report. So I've got a complete log of everything that occurred in that. Additionally, I can look at timelines. So if I wanted to look at the timelines across my case, for instance, I have the phishing case that I'll take a look at the timeline for that one and say, simply select that phishing case timeline. What's that bouncing? Here we go. And when I look at that, the results start to show me that I've got 25 flagged items. Most of them occurred in the latter part of 2020, moving forward. So if I simply zero in on that portion of the time frame, I can start to see what the alerts were, what the flags were, and investigate those more closely. If I wanted to see specifically what those flags were, I could simply select the flagged option here in the lower pane. And as I browse down through this, you'll notice that I've got the invoice.exe, which we happen to know was malware, but we also have the ability to scroll through and see if there was anything else in there, including this invoice.zip, which was the carrier for that particular malware. And we can go in and grab that, see what machine it resided in, and go directly to that path to remediate it. So it gives us the ability to look at not only the malware, but also the path in which it was found. And you'll notice here that it's already been flagged as dangerous based on the verdict and scores that Binalyze AIR is going to assign to these items that were determined to be a risk or danger to your environment. If we look at the settings, we have the ability in settings to get more granular in how we run this. So these settings in general relate to the licensing and the logging capabilities. When we look at the assets, you can see that we have the ability to update the responders automatically or manually. So when a new release of Binalyze AIR comes out, it can automatically detect and update the responder accordingly to the new version of the Binalyze AIR console. Additionally, for security, you have the ability to leverage SSL certificates. The console port by default is using 443, but you can use 8443 if you prefer. Additionally, you can enable IP restrictions and then enable two-factor authentication. We also have the ability to leverage single sign-on for Azure AD as well. You've got some of the features we can include. We can enable or disable the Interact. So you have the capability of allowing or disallowing Interact sessions. You can also resolve the responder public IP. You can make case selection for any of the tasks that you're going to perform mandatory. So before you can actually initiate that task, you can select to make sure that it's assigned to a particular case was selected. Additionally, you have the ability to enable RFC 3161 timestamping and leverage low-card blockchain. We also have the ability to add a banner message, for instance, in use policies and enable asset auto tagging, as I'd shown you previously, to run immediately after responder install. For the users, actually, I think I'll go into roles before I do that. You'll notice that we have a list of roles here that include things like the global admin, organizational admin, the L1, L2 analyst. So by comparison, if I were to look at the details for the L1, L2 analyst, this is where we can enable privileges that they can leverage in using Binalyze AIR. So you'll notice that many of these privileges are disabled for the L1, L2 role. But conversely, for instance, global admin or organizational admin. We can look at the details for that. And as expected, the global admin would have all of the privileges enabled. Now, one thing that we recommend that you only have a single global admin and a backup for redundancy capability. However, you may want to have tiered steps for privileges. So you could have assistant or alternate, that type of thing, where you could have an organizational admin, for instance, that would have most, if not all, the privileges. The one thing to keep in mind is any users that have a global admin role are able to see all of the cases, whereas you can compartmentalize cases otherwise to specific users. So you have that ability. Evidence repositories, as I had covered earlier, you have the option to select from SMB, FTP, Amazon Buckets, or Azure Blobs, and you can authenticate into those very quickly using the buckets. For those that want to comply with GDPR requirements or are required to, you can see that you have the ability to select specific regions so that the data stays within the jurisdiction or region where it was produced or used, so that you can demonstrate that it was verified. You can verify that it did not leave the jurisdiction and violate GDPR. You also have the ability to create new policies. Essentially, you can assign a policy, and in these you can decide where you're going to collect the evidence to. For instance, again, locally or an evidence repository, as I've just shown you. You can also select to do direct collections using a minimum amount of disk space. You can set the path to the repository, and in Interact, you have the option to, if you were to get a data from an endpoint that you may want to bring back into your sandbox, for instance, or your lab for further analysis, you can select to download that and then choose your download directory where you want to place that. You also have the ability to regulate the resource limits that you want to enable. So you can set the maximum amount of CPU that the AIR responder will be allowed to consume for a given task. You can also limit bandwidth and disk space. You'll notice that compression is on by default, but you can turn that off. You can also encrypt evidence and assign it a password. And when you encrypt it, you'll notice we get this question often. It's AES 256 encrypted zip archives are created. Additionally, we have the isolation capability and the policies for that. And then you can look at how you want to back up your data and where you want to back it up to. So moving from there, we have the option to close this. Excuse me. That takes us through the remainder of the settings. And again, I'd shown you the Frank AI previously. So what this allows us to do now is complete the overview of Binalyze AIR console, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Bob. I've been keeping an eye on our chat here. We have had a couple of questions come in. Is acquire image on the quick start menu a logical image or bit by bit image?
It's a forensic image, so it's a bit by bit. However, it can be from a physical disk or a logical disk, a logical volume.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Another question, where do you access the console CLI, or what address do you use to access it via SSH?
We do have that capability. It's actually within the, it's generally going to be run in an on-prem environment, which would be running within the Docker container. The Docker install is very simple in the deployment of that. So we're able to pull down the Docker environment and run from the command line.
Okay, perfect. And then one additional question, what is the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 systems?
Essentially the number of assets you intend to deploy the responder to in the environment. And obviously the larger environments generally are more efficient, more faster running the tier 2 deployment as opposed to running everything from a single Ubuntu instance with the Docker container.
Okay. There is one additional question from Andrew here. Just how does that affect upgrades? Andrew, could you maybe put in the chat what you're referring to there so we could address that? And then if anyone else has any additional questions, we'd be happy to field those now as well. While we're waiting for Andrew to expand on that or waiting for additional questions, I did want to mention that we have a follow-up webinar June 18th at noon Eastern time, where we'll do a deeper dive into the investigation hub and also show some specific examples. I will send a follow-up email after this webinar concludes that will have all of the sign-up information and the link there as well. Okay. I don't see any additional questions coming in. So with that, Bob, if you don't have anything else to share with us, I think we can conclude the webinar.
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. Oh, sorry, I do see two more that came in. How do you have technical documentation that is not webinar based?
You can go to the KB. So if you look here, we have the Binalyze AIR knowledge base, and in here you have a rather robust capability. Additionally, you can leverage the Frank AI and ask it your questions as well. So you have the knowledge base, which is kb.binalyze.com, which is obviously searchable, and you can navigate through that, or you can go into the Frank AI for support.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bob. And then we got additional question. When updating the console per the documentation, there are two methods via a tier 1 and tier 2. Curious if there is downtime.
Very minimal. We frequently update our demo environment, and we simply, send out a quick message internally for anybody that happens to be in it at the moment that there's going to be an update. But the update time, the time frame, I've never seen it more than half an hour, more along the lines of 10 to 15 minutes for the transition to the update.
And then can you show where to update it?
Again, probably one of the things I would say it'd be the updating AIR in the KB would give you more detail. So you can see here for the single tier or two-tier systems, you can see that you've got a rather comprehensive list, including the commands that you're going to run. opt.binalyze-AIR is the container or the folder in which it's running from. Pull down the Docker compose command, it's going to pull it and then run the update. And conversely, you can do the same with the instructions for the two-tier update.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Okay, if that is all the questions that we have, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Again, I will send out a replay to everyone and also a link to register for our next webinar on June 18th. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you all soon.